Good to be here.
Beyond whether the Obama administration intends to engage in torture, which he is treating as open and shut, there is the equally important question of whether his government plans to investigate and prosecute Bush administration officials for their treatment of detainees at places like Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo Bay, and other facilities. In fact, visitors to the Obama website, change.gov, have voted this the #1 question they'd like to have answered. The second highest ranking question about the oversight of the banking industry does not even come close. The question posed by Bob Furtick of New York City. Will you appoint a special prosecutor, ideally Patrick Fitzgerald, to independently investigate the gravest crimes of the Bush administration, including torture and warrantless wiretapping? This afternoon on that website, the Obama transition team categorizing that question as one it has, quote, previously answered, posting an answer given by Vice President-elect Biden during a December 21st interview, quote, the questions of whether or not a criminal act has been committed or a very, very bad judgment has been engaged in is something the Justice Department decides. Barack Obama and I are, President-elect Obama and I are not sitting thinking about the past. We're focusing on the future. I'm not ruling prosecution in and not ruling it out. I just think, the Vice President-elect concluded, we should look forward. I think we should be looking forward, not backwards. We always look forward to the presence of John Dean, Nixon White House counsel, author of Broken Government, joining us now from Los Angeles. John, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
The Vice President-elect's contention that investigating torture is something the Justice Department decides. If you've only been following the Justice Department for the last 8 years and you just assume it's a political branch of the president's party as opposed to an actual independent prosecutorial force, does that sound a little strange? Is it possible that they're leaving it up to the Attorney General thinking he'll make the right choice?
Well, it's interesting, if they indeed have made that policy decision in their web answer, it's really going to confront Eric Holder in his confirmation hearing next week with addressing and responding to Congress as to what they're going to do about torture.
There has been, relative to justice, not necessarily with Mr. Holder, but on the blogosphere, there's been a lot of buzz during the week about some of the other appointments at justice. Should we be looking into their identities, their backgrounds, their comments on this thing to determine, to try to guess whether or not, whether it's the Attorney General who decides, whether the President-elect who decides, whether or not the Obama administration winds up investigating or prosecuting torture?
Well, we have seen some announcements, indeed, that suggest that people who have no tolerance for this kind of activity, for example, a lot of these problems started with the Office of Legal Counsel. The nominee that Obama has suggested, Dawn Johnson, to head that office is somebody who has no tolerance for torture, somebody who has indeed been very outspoken about her opposition to the things that have come out of the Office of Legal Counsel. So, indeed, there are some hints coming out as to the direction they're headed.
Tuesday of this week, John Conyers, the Democrat of Michigan, introduced legislation that would set up what he called as a National Commission on Presidential War Powers and Civil Liberties. It would have subpoena power. It would have a $3 million budget. But you have this extraordinary economic circumstance that we're in, and the stimulus package to try to sell to whoever is reluctant about it. Healthcare system is obviously a key ingredient. Iraq, Afghanistan, all these things that are of major consequence. Is there likely to be enough political capital for a commission like that to become a reality?
Well, commissions are where you take issues you don't want to confront and bury them, and that has been the long history of commissions. I have the greatest respect for John Conyers, known him since my days at the House Judiciary Committee, and this is sort of a fallback position. I hope we don't go there. I hope there's something much more definitive than a commission.
What do you make, speaking of being definitive, was there a definitive answer contained in the suddenly reposted quote from Vice President-elect Biden about this? Because I would think anybody reading that would suggest that the tone of it is, yes, that is an already answered question, and the answer was, we are looking forward and not backwards, which would suggest no prosecutions.
Well, it could also, put this in context, Keith, you have 155 countries, of which the United States is one, that are party to the Convention Against Torture. There's a moral obligation on all those countries to investigate torture when it occurs. This is universal jurisdiction. Torture is considered right up there with genocide. And so if the United States passes on their moral obligation to investigate this, other countries are likely to step in, and this is going to be a huge embarrassment for the Obama administration. So maybe what they're saying is, we are going to toss this to Holder, let him decide what to do with it, and that will defer the issue at least from other countries starting an investigation.
My goodness, what would we do if we had decided not to prosecute this in the Obama administration, and in 2 years' time some international agency made up of many of our allies said, well, you know what, you're going to have this investigation? How would this country necessarily get up on its hind legs and say, no, you can't come and investigate us simply because we don't like that kind of international investigation? Or would we have to cooperate to try to continue to restore the country's good image?
I think at that point we'd be forced to do something ourselves. It would be, you know, this is a terrible international incident that's waiting to happen. There are a number of prosecutors who have already made hints in foreign countries that they're going to not let this issue drop. So if the United States does drop it, we're going to be confronted with a real incident.
Goodness. John Dean, author of Worse Than Watergate and Broken Government. As always, John, great thanks. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Keith.